we are now going to learn how are we going to deal with arrays or lists in JavaScript. But before going there, for example, we are in this situation, okay? Const, I'm going to initialize here a student. For example, the name is Colas. Okay. Then I'm going to initialize again another student. For example, student2 is equal to Pitok. Then student3 is equal to Pablo. Okay. So what I have here are actually three variables of the same kind. I said of the same kind because all of them are students. For example, we have here student 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So, what if I'm going to add, or I'm going to, let us say, um, we have 3 students in a class, then uh, I want to add another student. Okay, so what I'm going to do naturally here, if ever I'm going to follow this convention, is that I'm going to have student 4. Okay? And student 6, 5, 7, and so on. Okay? So what I'm trying to point out here is that we are now creating a lot of variables, okay? Individual variables for this situation wherein we are going to store data, okay, in these respective variables, but take note that all of these are of the same kind. I said of the same kind, it is because all of them are students. Okay, so every time that we are going to uh, add a student, in this case, we are going to modify our code and we are going to add one variable. So in this case, we are going to use here an array. Okay, so how are we going to initialize an array? Okay, first we have here the definition for an array. List-like objects used to store multiple values. Take note, multiple values in a single variable. So it is now, instead we are going to have multiple variables, okay, with different multiple values, different values. We are just going to have a single variable with multiple values. Okay, for example, we have here let, or then the name of the variable of the array, then the initialization or declaration for our array. Okay, so our array, so we have here uh, a square bracket. Okay, the open and the close bracket. Okay, so in this example that we have, so we have here an array of fruits. Okay, so we have here apple, then comma, comma, and so on. Okay, each of these are called elements. Okay, so these are elements of an array. Okay, so in our example here, instead that we are going to have different variable for different names, so I'm going to have uh, students. I'm just going to make it plural with S, okay? Then it's equal to Kulas, Pitok, and let's say Pablo. Okay? So this is now more efficient compared with what we have here, because if ever that we are going to add an element or a student into our list, we're just going to have here a comma, then we're going to have Maria, instead of having a separate variable for Maria. Okay, so I'm just going to delete our variables there. So we now have here our students. Okay, and again, each of these are called elements. Okay, these are elements of an array. Okay, and each of our elements are actually uh, have their own what we call as index. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this one, console.log students. Save. Okay, so here are now our On line number 4, I have displayed all of them into our console. So we have here our array, okay? And as you could see, we have here 0, 1, 2, and 3. These are called our index, okay? So again, each elements into our array are actually represented by an index, okay? And our index always starts with 0, okay? So the first element is 0, and the last element, okay, is always 1 less than the length of the array. That's the index. That's the index of the last element. Okay, again, the index of the last element is always 1 less than our length. And when you say length, that's the number of items or elements into our array. Okay? So, how are we going to access our elements? Okay, for example, I am going to access this one here. So we have here the convention, the name of the array, then the index of that element. So if ever in this case, fruits, then 0, meaning we are accessing the first element. If ever I'm going to access the last element here, cherry, fruits 0, 1, 2. So therefore, fruits 2 will give us cherry. So in our example here, now if ever I'm going to have 1, okay? So students, then index 1, 0, 1. So pitok must be displayed. So we have there pitok. Okay, so we have returned element number 1. So if ever we're going to have element number 2, save, it must be Pablo. Okay, so that's how are we going to uh, access an element from our array. Then length returns the number of items. In this example here, we have 3. But take note, the last element has an index 1 less than the length. So therefore, if ever the length is 3, cherry is 2. In our example here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a length of 4, but then the last element should have uh, the index of 3. Okay, so that's how are we going to declare and access the elements. Okay, so next is we have here the basic operations on arrays. There are actually a lot of operations, but we're just going to, for a start, we're just going to have these elements. No, these methods. Okay. First series we have the push. Okay. It is going to add an item to the end of the array. Okay. So in our example here, for example, we have here. Okay. On line number 2, we have declared our array with 4 elements. And line number 3, I have displayed those elements. Now, on line number 5, I'm going to have students dot push. Okay? Push again is going to appends new elements to the end of an array and returns the new length. Okay? It is going to return us the new length of uh, the array. So therefore, it is going to return a number. But anyway, I'm just going to have first, let us say, we're going to add digong. Okay, digong. Okay, Donald. Okay, so on line number 5, I have added the name Donald. Then on number 6, I'm going to display students. Okay, save. So as you can see here, on line number 3, so we have 4 elements into our array. And after the push, okay, so we have now 5 elements. Okay, and as you can see here, we have now Donald into our array. Okay, so here is the beginning or the start of the array, and Maria is the end. Okay, so that is why when we have pushed, okay, Donald, so as you can see, Donald comes after Maria. Okay, that's for our push. Or we want to add an item or element into our array. Okay, pop is remove the last item. Okay, so now if ever I'm going to issue here the command pop, okay, I'm going to be here, pop, then without any parameter, okay, so after pop, okay, pop is going to remove the last element and returns it. Okay, later on. Okay, save. So we're going to have first the removal of the element. Okay, so as you can see here, after pop, so we don't have Maria anymore. Okay, now if ever I'm going to have here, and take note here, it returns a string, okay, or undefined, removes and returns it. So if I can have here const last element, okay, then I'm going to have console.log last element. Save. Okay. So after pop, we have removed the last element, which is Maria. At the same time, the pop command or method returns Maria and assign it to the last element variable. Okay, so we have here now log it in line number 8. So we have now Maria on line number 8. Maria has been displayed. Okay, so pop means it is going to remove and return the last element of the array. Okay, then we have shift removes the first item. I think it is going to return also. Okay, after shift, so we have here shift. So it is going to remove Colas. Okay, so save, save it there. Colas has been removed and returned. Okay, so shift is going to return the first element, whereas pop is going to remove and return the last element. Okay, that's our shift. Then unshift adds an item to the beginning of the array. Okay, so that's the opposite of push. Okay, push is going to add at the end of the array, whereas unshift is going to add an item at the beginning of the array. Okay, so unshift. I have here students dot unshift, then uh, Cindy. Dave. So as you can see here, Cindy is now on the first element of the array. Okay, so both pop, push and shift is going to add an element to our array. And I want you to take note that these methods mutate the original array. When you say mutate, it is going to modify. Okay? So it is going to add an element, remove an element, and add an element with the original arrays. As you can see here, I have the original array as students. Then as I displayed it here, I also displayed the original array. Okay. So next is we have, so how are we going to loop through arrays in JavaScript? So there are three ways on how are we going to loop through our array. Okay. So first is we have, okay, the usual, okay, full control over iteration. Okay, so we're going to use here our iterator. We have I. So in this example here, we have the students. Okay, so we have here students dot no for. I need to use first our for loop. Okay, so for then let I is equal to 0, meaning we are going to start at index 0. Then semicolon I is less than. So when are we going to stop iterating into our array? If ever it is greater than our length, okay? Or equal to our length, because take note, our last element is one less than the length. Okay, so therefore, if ever they are equal, so we should have to stop. So our condition here must be students dot length. Okay, so while it is less than, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3, because the length is 4, so it is going to iterate. Okay, then how are we going to uh, increment the value? I plus plus means we are going to add 1 to our array. So in every iteration, we are going to add 1 into our iterator, which is I. Okay, so I'm just going to have first console.log. Then I'm going to access students, then the current element. Okay, so because our elements or I here is going to start from 0 up to 3. And take note, length is 4, so therefore we have here less than. So while I is less than 4. Okay, so it is going to display students 0, 1, 2, and 3. Take note, this is our element. So save. So we have here, they are displayed, each of our elements has been displayed. Okay, so if ever we are going to have here this kind of display, so meaning it is the array that has been displayed into our console. Here is individual elements. Okay, so that's one for loop. Okay. Next is we have direct value access, okay, for of loop. Okay, so we are going to call it for of loop. Okay, so we have here the syntax for, then let an item of the array, then the commands. Okay, so for, then let us say I'm just going to have here student of students. Okay, so this is now the variable that is going to hold the value for each of the element into our array as we are going to iterate. So on the very first iteration, student, the value is Kulas. Then as it is going to return and iterate, then Pitok, Pablo, and Maria. So here, the advantage of this is that we are not monitoring here the length of the array. Okay? It is going to automatically end as long as we approach or we reach the end or the last element. Okay? So I'm going to have here console.log, then student. Okay? So I don't have the index anymore because as I've said, in every iteration, this variable is going to hold the value of the element. Okay, so save. So you're going to have the same result. Okay, save it there. So we have displayed each. So for student, each element from the array. Okay, so that's for of loop. Then we have the last. We have for each method. Okay, so here the syntax. Okay, the name of the array dot for each, then item and the optional index, then uh, let's say the commands. Okay, so I have here students dot for each. Okay, so inside here I'm going to have okay. First is going to have the item. I'm just going to call it student, comma, index. Or actually, we could let go of the index, but I'm just going to include here the complete syntax. Okay. So here, I'm just going to have here then console.log then student. Okay. So the student here, this variable is just actually the same of the student in our for of loop. Okay. The only thing here is we have the index. They're actually almost the same, but we have here our index as the difference. Okay. So I could have here, let us say, index then plus, so, oops, the log index. Okay. Anyway, what is important here now is index. No, the student, I mean. Student, again, is going to stand for each of the items or the element into our array. Here, I just added the index to be displayed. Okay, so there, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the index. And this is now the student or the content of the element or the value in our element. Okay. So these are the three ways on how are you going to iterate through our array, okay, or loop through arrays in JavaScript. Okay, before proceeding to the next, okay, so okay, let us say I'm going to display all of them into our page. Okay, so as of now, we don't have any display on our page because we have displayed all of them into our console. Okay, so I want to display all of them in an unordered list. Okay, okay, I'm going to use for each. Okay, and by the way, into our index.html, so we have again, just like our previous example, I have divided these into three divs. Okay, so I'm just going to have here which one uh, in JavaScript. Okay, so working with arrays in JavaScript, that's our header. Then we're going to display in our main div, or I want to display here the list of students into our array. Okay, so save and in our index.js, first I'm going to get const a main div is equal to document dot get element by ID, then it have main div. Okay. Again, I'm going to display all elements into an unordered list. Okay, so that is actually a UL, unordered list. Okay, so const UL is equal to document that create element create element, then we're going to have UL. Okay. Then, by the way, if ever we're going to have a UL, it would be UL. Then each item here is we have a list. Okay. One, A, B, and C. Save. Okay, so we could see there A, B, C. Okay, so this is how, and by the way, okay, so we have here an ordered list. A, B, and C. Okay, so we are going to create this dynamically into our JS. So save. So first we get our main div, then we have created our UL. So next is we're going to create a lot of LI or list based on our array. So here we're going to have students dot for each. Then I'm just going to have student. I'm not going to include the index. Okay. So I'm going to create here a list. Create element for each of the item. You have there li. Then li dot inner text is equal to student. Okay. Then I'm going to add ul dot add, no, not add, but append child. Then we have li. Okay. So in every iteration, we are going to create a list element, then assign the student name for the inner text and add it to our unordered list. Then at the end, we are then going to add or append our UL into our main div. We have the UL. Okay. So save. Oops, we don't have main div. Wait. Main dash div. Okay. Correct. Then we have create element UL. Oh, we have an error. Requires not defined at index 1. Oops. It added here a line for the create element. Okay. Save. Oh no, I have a problem here. Document dot here. Okay. Dot create element li. So that's the error. So save. So we have there now the names of our students. Okay. So if we are going to go to our elements, so we have here now in our body, so we have in our main div, so we have here our unordered list, and we have the different lists, okay, inside our UL. And our UL has been appended into our main div. Okay, so actually, we are going to have the same result if we ever going to use any of the loops that we have here. Okay, so what is important here is this line here so that we could get the current element. Okay? So the error that I had was I forgot to write the document. Okay? The object document. Okay? So how about if ever that we are going to have. Okay, I'm just going to copy and I'm going to have them into a select. Okay, a drop down object. So I'm going to have here select. So we have created here a select object or tag. Then next is if wherever we're going to have the select, then we are going to create an option. Okay, one, two, three, and four. Okay, so meaning in every iteration now we are going to create an option. Okay, so I'm going to remove them. Then in our index, so I'm just going to have here opt option. Then okay, so first we have created select. Okay, we have created here a select element. Okay, by using now the create element. Then for each of the students, so for each item, we are going to iterate, and in every item, we are going to create an option element. Okay, and the inner text would be the name of the student, and before we're going to iterate or before we're going to go back to the or before we proceed to the next element, so we are going to append the option that we have created here into our select element. Then the select element then is going to be added into our main div. Okay, so an ordered list and a select drop-down list. Okay, oops, we don't have the value here, so there must be a problem. Okay, save it here. Okay, it must be an option. Okay, so save it there now. We have now the names of our students. Okay, so anyway, we are going to have some more elements as we go along with our discussion. Okay, so next is we have um, okay, array transformation. Okay, so I want you to take note of the difference between here. These methods are, it says it is going to mutate, or meaning it is going to change or modify the original array. But here in this case, it doesn't mutate the original array because it is going to return a new one. So for example, in our map, transforms each array element. So we have here the syntax, by the way, of the map method. Okay, so map, then we have the parameters, the element, and the two optional parameters, the index and the original array. Okay, so for example, I'm going to now, by following now, okay, so I'm just going to proceed here, map method. Okay, students dot map, that I'm going to have here student. Okay. So I'm not going to include the index and the array. Then we are going to return the transformed elements. For example, I'm going to convert, we're going to return, then student dot, okay, to uppercase. Okay. So I'm going to return the uppercase or the transformed into uppercase element for each of the item. And it is said, if we are going to go back, it says it return a new one. What is this new one here? It is actually going to return, in this case, it is going to return a new array. Okay, so I have here uh, const, I'm just going to call it new array or new students array is equal to this one here. So students, then console.log new array. Okay, so I have displayed on line 51 the original array, and the new array affected by map, we converted it into uppercase, is now assigned. The new array is now assigned into the variable new array. That's what I have displayed here in line number 52. Okay, so save. Okay, into our console. So on line 51, so you could see here, this is now our original array, the students. Then we have here on line 52, the new array which are converted into capital letters. Okay? So meaning, whatever you are going to do here, whatever you are going to return here, okay, is going to be the new value for each of the element into our new array. Okay? To uppercase, to lowercase, or whatever, it will depend on the requirements. Okay? But what you must have to understand here is we have transform the original array here, or whatever are we going to make with each of those elements into our new array. Okay. Actually, there are a lot of other usage for the map, but as of now, this is the most basic usage of the map method. Okay. It is going to transform each of the elements and returns a new array. Okay. So next is we have filter. Okay, keeps elements that match a condition. Okay, so meaning we are going to filter our array. For in our example here. Okay. Uh, okay, I'm going to this. Let us say I'm going to filter this list. I'm not going to include. Take note. I'm not going to include pitok into our new array. So I'm going to filter out pitok. Okay. So to filter out pitok, that's our map. Okay. Const new, still we're going to have a new array here. Is equal to students dot filter. Then we have the student. Okay. We are going to return, as I've said, filter out pitok. So therefore, the returned elements should not be equal to pitok. So student is not equal to pitok. Student. Okay. So in this case, it is going to test the condition for each of the items. So first, is kulas not equal to pitok? True. So therefore, it is going to be returned. Here is pitok not equal to pitok? False. Why? It's because they are equal. So therefore, if ever the result here is false, this is not going to be returned. Okay, so therefore, pitok should be filtered out from our new array. Okay, so save. So as you can see here, we don't have pitok on line 57. Okay, line 57 is our new array. Okay, so we have now removed pitok from our list. Okay, then the last, okay, reduce. Reduces array to a single value. That's the filter. Then we have here our reduce. Okay, so normally, okay, before I'm going to discuss the reduce, okay, I have here an array of numbers. 78, 86, 89, 45, 67, 90. Okay, so if ever I want to get the sum of all values here, if we are not going to use the reduce method, so normally I'm going to have here const, let us say sum is equal to 0, then let us say grades dot for each, then for each grade, then sum is equal to sum plus grade. Okay? Then console.log the sum of grades. Okay, so save. Oops. Oh, assignment to constant variable. So now, why do we have this error? Assignment to constant variable. I have assigned sum as constant. Then I have reassigned its value here. Take note, this is reassignment. So therefore, we are going to have let sum is equal to 0. Then we have there 425. Okay, that's the sum of all the grades there. And by the way, to have a shortcut for this one here is we could have plus equals then grade. This grade here is this one here. So sum plus equals grade is just the same with sum is equal to sum plus grade. So save. So still we're going to have 425. Okay. Now using reduce. Okay. We have here the syntax. Okay. Const. Okay. By the way, reduce is going to return reduces array to a single value. So, meaning it is not going to return here an array, but it is on a single value. Okay, so by following now the syntax, we have here numbers that reduce, then accumulator. So take note here, accumulator meaning the sum, the variable is that is going to hold the running total, comma, the current value, or meaning the element, then we have here the plus sign, okay? And the initial value of the accumulator. We're just going to have it by 0, okay? Following this syntax, so we have here, const, I'm just going to have it total is equal to grades dot reduce, okay, blank, then the arrow. And by the way, we have here comma the initial value. Okay. So here we're going to have the accumulator, which is our sum and current. I'm just going to submit current grade. Okay. Sum is the one that is going to hold the running total. Okay. Or the sum. Current grade is going to stand for each of the items, and 0 is the initial value for our sum. So here, I'm going to return sum plus the current grade. Okay. It is going to iterate through the array. It is going to get the sum, then assign it to the variable total. Okay. So actually, they are going to have the same output. So save. Okay. 425 for the old method, and by using now the reduce, we still have, or we still get 425. Okay, as I've said, the same, but this one here is more efficient compared with this one here. Okay, so let us say I'm going to start with 10 in this case here. So save. So we have here 435 because we have started with 10, then added 425, so we have 435. So to duplicate this one here, so it seems like I am having here an initial value for the sum of 10. Okay, then save. Then actually we have now the same values. Okay, so we could have here a lot of, but anyway, I'm not telling you that you are not going to use any more for each, but you could still use this one here, especially if you have extra operations here. Okay, then you are going to use this one here. So you are going to use any of these on case-to-case basis. Okay. So on our next video, we're going to have the objects, okay, so that we are then going to deal with records or an array of records. Okay, that will be in our next video.